World Cup. Botafogo are out. Gadam Naven with us. Ali, overall, this wasn't very good.
Overall, you are 100% correct. And I think that first challenge by Alexander Barbosa kind of gave us an idea as to what this game was going to be all about, certainly from the perspective of Botafogo. Palmeiras, I thought, were the only team that were interested in playing and interested in creating opportunities and finding some isolation with Estevao. I think they lack in the final third. Palmeiras, they're unable, once they find themselves in good positions, they're unable to create the chances or find the final pass or make the final decision. It makes you wonder when you see Vitor Roque play for Palmeiras, because we've seen him with Barcelona, we've seen him with Betis, and you can draw conclusions from that. But now at Palmeiras, you're thinking, well, maybe he's going to be better there.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder how in the world was this guy picked up by Barcelona and paid as much money as he was to go to Barcelona. Because honestly, I just don't see it. It's a raw talent that seems to be rushed every time he gets on the ball. It feels like he wants to get 1,000 decisions made in a second or two, and it just doesn't work that way. Vitor Roque, I don't think is the sort of player that would thrive in this sort of environment, and if you're depending on him to be the one that scores the goals, I just don't think that's the case. However, Palmeiras do enough.
Yes.
They win the game, and I think deservedly so. Botafogo and Palmeiras, particularly Botafogo in the first 45 minutes, were interested in one thing, and that's kicking the bejesus out of each other.
Yeah.
And Botafogo didn't offer anything in the attack, didn't offer anything interesting through the midfield. Palmeiras kept most of the ball, tried to create some chances, tried to create some opportunities, did enough to win the game, and I think, as I said before, deservedly so, they advanced.
Yeah, I think that's the takeaway there, Nathan. Isn't it the best team won?
Yeah, I would say so. And it's about just doing enough, as Ali's been saying there. Unless it wasn't a classic game. And I think from my perspective, getting a chance to watch some of these Brazilian sides go up against teams from outside of their continent, you can sort of see the benefits, the style that they have, and how it can cause problems. But then when they go up against each other, in this game in particular, it just didn't quite hit the same way that you thought it would do. But it's not to say that it wasn't a good game in some ways. You know, the commitment was there. Didn't necessarily have some of the flair that we've seen in times gone by, but there were two sides that were going to do everything they could to make sure they were in the next round. And thankfully, there was that little bit of quality. And as Ali said, yes, there was that little deflection, but it's a nice setup, and I think it's very much deserving of that goal in that moment. So, you know, they're into that next round now, and who knows who they can face.
A lot of eyes, of course, Gab, on Estevao, given the hype around him, and of course that big move to Chelsea, which is imminent. What are Chelsea going to do with him?
It's a good question. I mean, I think at some point they're going to have to decide whether he sticks around or whether, you know, it makes more sense to give him the minutes, give him on loan. It's always tricky. But remember, this guy's just 18 years old, right? So kind of parameters of players who come over to Europe that young. You know, you have the Endrick scenario where he goes to a big team and, you know, basically never plays. Or you've got other people who are ready to contribute. I mean, I think, you know, given he plays on the right-hand side, Chelsea might feel that they're already better served there, and if they can't give the minutes, he may go on loan. Personally, I think he's got enough quality to be there, but you know, if Madueke is going to be your first choice on that flank, or possibly, given what we saw in previous games, you know, Enzo Fernandez at 10 and Cole Palmer out there, then it gets a little bit crowded.
What's interesting, Nathan, if you look at Chelsea in the past, obviously the likes of Lampard, Terry, Petr Cech, whoever it might be the sort of person to put your arm around you, like introduce you to the squad, help you bed in. With this Chelsea at the moment, there seems to be so many youngsters and so much competition for places. Is it fair to say the environment he's going into is going to be a difficult one for him to adapt to?
Possibly, but again, some of that's just difficult because he's going to a new continent as an 18-year-old, and with a, you know, relatively speaking, a hefty price tag and a sense of pressure in terms of being able to step forward and to be successful. I think as we've seen across the last few years for Chelsea, there has been disappointment in terms of, say, relative lack of success for them. So every time there's a new sign as well, this will be the guy that will take us back to where we feel that we belong. But what I would say is going back all those years to those players that you've mentioned with Lampard's, Terry's, all these guys, you know, that Chelsea side was a big, mature side. And I think youngsters coming in had to match that level of maturity if they wanted to play and fit in. I think you hear the stories of the likes of Mo Salah and Kevin De Bruyne not really being able to even find a spark or find a moment in that team. And now you look at those two, see two of the best players to ever play in the Premier League. So I think in some ways the system that it is now, where there is an emphasis on younger players, maybe it'll make it fractionally easier for Estevao. You know, as he comes over, has to learn the language, get used to the weather, the culture, the way that football's being played. Whereas I think because he's got more youngsters around him, perhaps that'll make it easier because there'll be more people who could probably relate to just that little bit more. So I'm hopeful for him, but again, at the age of 18, he's got a long time ahead of him, hasn't he?
Hendrick's an interesting example that Gab brings up, given all the hype around him. Moved to Real Madrid, and so far, obviously, it hasn't been quite what he expected. Obviously, different player, different circumstances, different expectations, yet still, as Nadem says, at just 18 years of age, there's a lot going on and off the pitch.
There's a problem for Estevao and any other 18-year-old that is coming now into this sort of stage, and that is Lamine Yamal. And the reason it is a problem is because Lamine Yamal at 17, he's dominating. And has been dominating. And so now this sort of expectation was like, well, if that guy can do it, and he's in the same profile of player, well, why not? Why not? And it says unrealistic expectations. And so the one thing that I would say that Estevao has going for him is that if you watch Palmeiras play, their attack is based upon what Estevao does or doesn't do. Right. They'll go as far as he's able to take them because he is the one source of creativity and dynamic movement that they have. And when you are that player, even at a young age, there's a level of confidence that goes along with that. And knowing full well that this team, filled with all this experience and filled with talented players, they are depending on me to be the one that creates chances. And that's the way they play Palmeiras. They find Estevao, they isolate him, and hope that he does something. It's as simple as that. So maybe in having been carrying that responsibility already, it doesn't hit him nearly as hard that even though he's 18 and he's going to a different culture, a different language, when it comes down to it, you give me the ball at my feet and I know I can take players on. I think young players run into issues when they start trying to do things differently than what got them there to begin with. And if Estevao simplifies this game and says, man, with the ball at my feet, I don't care how old or how young I am, I can take players on. If he does that, then I think he can be useful to Chelsea. You see the change of pace. The change of pace is not going to disappear because he takes a flight from Brazil to London. You see the talent. You see the potential. And then it's now up to Chelsea to be able to nurture and develop that talent and that potential.
Jurgen Klopp has jumped in and then some.
Okay.
The Club World Cup is the worst idea ever implemented in football. People who have never had anything to do with day-to-day business are coming up with these ideas. Perhaps not everyone has recognised the real problem yet, that next season players will suffer injuries that will never have had before. If not this season, then it will happen. There will be injuries at some stage at the World Cup or afterwards. Gab, I want to go to you first because you've been very pro-Club World Cup, of course, since its announcement.
Idea of a Club World Cup, I think it's long overdue. The implementation, I'm not necessarily a fan of, and maybe even some of the reasons why it came about. Look, this whole thing, it's like, oh, look, there could be more injuries because some players are playing more games and, there's going to be a different preseason. I mean, first of all, I think everybody has said this. Klopp is kind of just one of many people who has repeated what others have said. Is it a risk? Sure. But, the reality is countries have been playing, or players have been playing in Euros and Copa Americas and World Cups at the end of the season. They do it every 2 years. Now we're asking them to do it again one more time and then go into club season. Is this going to... is this going to affect them irredeemably? I don't know. And the other thing, which I don't get, is he says people who have nothing to do with day-to-day business. Well, some critics of the Club World Cup would say this is actually all about day-to-day business. It's all about making more money, more sponsorship, bringing more money to FIFA so that they can redistribute it, and then Gianni Infantino can get reelected and whatever else. So I think there's many things you can criticize them for, but chasing the business day to day, I don't think that's one of them.
Nadem?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. from my perspective, since the pandemic, you hear so much talk about players and burnout and so on. And as time has passed, the conversation's kind of slid away to the background a little bit. But there's still that 1% who plays so much football. And I don't know if Ali's the same as me, but for some of these guys playing maybe 60 to 80 games a season, that's an obscene amount of football. You know, we're talking 2 seasons worth of football for the average player happening in the space of 1 year. But it's another year back to back to back to back. But then we'll say, oh, you know, when the tournament's over, you get 3 weeks off. What is 3 weeks off when you've played all that football to this point? So I think from Jurgen Klopp's perspective, having seen those players and been at a club where that's the amount of football that's being played, you can definitely see the concern there. I think overall, though, in terms of how football is, there are some teams who maybe are looking for more football. There was a point last year when I was lucky enough to speak with Gilberto Silva, and he was talking about how there's some teams that seek more football. He was talking about some of the teams in Brazil, for example, trying to find more games and so on. And it's funny because they're all going to take part in the same competition, but have different eyes on it, different perspectives. Like the teams that are halfway through their season now, you know, whether we're looking at MLS or other places like that, like this tournament isn't really that great an inconvenience as such for them. So I get his point. It's 100% valid from the perspective of his teams, the teams that are like his, because for these players and for the staff and for everybody involved, it's a lot of football. And in some ways, I'm just glad that it's once every 4 years, because if this was an annual thing, then it would be chaotic. But again, the talk that has been said, it's been said many times over, as Gabba said, the fitness, the players, the injuries and so on and so forth. And I'll be honest, I can't even begin to think how hard it would be to play that much football and to be playing football at this point in the season after having already played for, you know, the previous 11 months as well.
I think if you look at it from the perspective of the teams that are not here, that are not in the Club World Cup, if you're Liverpool, for example, you're rooting hard, and I mean you are rooting hard for Manchester City to go deep in this Club World Cup. Yeah, get your minutes. Yeah, have stress. Have physical stress, have mental stress, go all the way through the Club World Cup, and yeah, take your 3 weeks off, but at some point you're going to have to come back. And everything is delayed then for Manchester City. And so Liverpool has an advantage. If I'm Barcelona, I'm rooting hard for Real Madrid to go deep for the same reasons. Because guess what? Real Madrid, at some point, Jude Bellingham is going to have his surgery. And they've made a choice that they're going to push that surgery. And that affects Real Madrid, and that affects the start of the season. And so, if I'm Barcelona, I'm rooting hard for Real Madrid to get more minutes, more stress, more physical stress, more mental stress. Yeah, all of this seems to be useful and important for the teams that continue to advance, but I think it's just as useful and important for the teams that are not here and are seeing these teams putting unnecessarily more minutes and more stress on their body.
Well then, at the knockout stages of the Gold Cup, the quarterfinal stages, Mexico take on Saudi Arabia, Panama, Honduras tonight. Meanwhile, tomorrow it's Canada against Guatemala and the US against Costa Rica. Now, what's been interesting over the last few hours are these rumours surrounding Mauricio Pochettino and the possibility that he had an interview at another Premier League club this week. We've been trying to back this up. What is the latest you can tell us about it?
So the club is Brentford, as you can read in the Chiron below, where, according to this report, he supposedly had an interview. Now, Brentford they've hired a manager. It's Keith Andrews, former Republic of Ireland international. So evidently Pochettino didn't get the job. My understanding is that Pochettino's camp, I mean, I don't know if they've commented on this publicly, but certainly the understanding is that this would be very, very unlikely for a number of reasons. I mean, first and foremost, Pochettino can't just go and interview. Well, first of all, let me take a step back. First and foremost, Brentford had a manager, and his name was Thomas Frank until, 3-4 weeks ago. For Pochettino to have interviewed with Brentford, it would mean that during the preparations of the Gold Cup, he would have had to go off and interview for the job. I find that extremely implausible. Also, Pochettino is under contract with the U.S. Soccer Federation. He could have only done this with their permission. Otherwise, he would be in serious trouble. Again, seems highly, highly unlikely. So I don't know if where this rumor comes from. It's some outlets have reported it, and I should say none of the mainstream outlets for now here in the UK have gone with it. and with good stead. My understanding, based on reporting from some of my our ESPN colleagues, is that this story is not accurate, and certainly he has not. If he interviewed for the Brentford job, it certainly hasn't happened now. I don't know, maybe happened years ago, but not as a replacement for Thomas Frank.
Last thing you need from the US camp, these rumours swirling around, is just getting the job done now, winning the Gold Cup and moving on to the focus of the World Cup, because so far, let's face it, it has been a disaster for Pochettino from pretty much day one.
Yeah, it's hard to make a case for Mauricio Pochettino and say, you know what, this is exactly the way we thought it was going to go. When the decision was made to go after Mauricio Pochettino, I think overall the feeling was, here's the United States showing some ambition. Here's the United States taking that step to say, you know what, we are going to be able to compete at the highest level because we have a manager that, at the very least, has coached at that level. Now, of course, what you have now is a group of players that are not here, that could be here for the Gold Cup, but apparently their regional competition, their only regional competition, is not important enough for those guys to be here. Okay, so they made a choice to make a team based upon basically a B squad, in which only 2 or 3 of these guys will actually feature potentially next year's World Cup. And in the middle of all that, they're losing games, they're winning games, they look good against Trinidad and Tobago, but they struggle against the other teams, and you're kind of thinking, it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back to the national team. And so, to your point, Dan, the only thing that Mauricio Pochettino and this national team can do to further this agenda forward, to push it forward, is win the Gold Cup. Anything short than that, then we go back into a tailspin of we don't know what in the world we're doing, negative momentum, everybody's pumping the brake, and Pochettino, when you ask him a question, he'll say something along the lines of, no, there's some positive here, we're building, still things to evaluate. And if I'm a fan of the United States, I'm expecting a whole lot more than what I've seen so far.
PSG in action against Inter Miami, the champions of Europe. 12-1 on. That means you've got to put $12 on to win $1. Inter Miami coming in at 5-1. Inter Miami then very much going into this tie as underdogs. Ahead of the tie, though, Alexis caught up with Fafa Picault.
Well, it also helps that you do get to share a locker room with the likes of Messi, with the likes of Jordi Alba, Busquets, etc. Just playing with them and kind of having that, heavy European names there, kind of like lower the level of intimidation going up against a PSG.
Yeah, I think in general as a group, when you have those guys, it makes things a bit easier. I think even players that are watching our team are going out in the tunnel against us, they see those names and it's like, okay. It's not a walkover, and we have some young guys and other guys as well that are ready to put out a fight, and we got some talent in the group and a lot of heart. So it's going to be a great match. I think if we come with everything and stay focused for 90 minutes, we can get a good job done.
Back to your RSL. Oh, no, I didn't even know Alexis was joining. Alexis, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I didn't know you were here. I was probably told and forgot. I'll start with you then. Stuff Nadem. Alexis, looking ahead to this tie, obviously, Inter Miami go into this match as underdogs. Given that fact, have they got nothing to lose going into this tie?
Yeah, Dan, honestly, I was literally going to phrase it just like that. You're so brilliant. They have nothing to lose, really, but everything to gain. And after speaking to Fafa Picault and hearing Javier Mascherano in his press conference, they were just saying that they want to go out there and leave something on PSG, show that they can at least compete, not necessarily win, but compete with the world's best. They already know that they have surpassed some expectations in getting out of the group. They're the last man standing representing MLS, and they still do have some of that Messi magic that we know can pop up here and there, especially when he's needed. And he's the perfect person to have in their locker room when they're going up against PSG. Word is a lot of the players were talking about La Remontada, the one that we saw back in 2017 when Barcelona came back to beat PSG 6-1. Messi was there, Suarez was there, Busquets was there, Jordi Alba was there. They have been talking and sharing stories in that locker room. So there is some belief that they can at least leave something on PSG. But they are definitely not taken aback by the star-studded champions of Europe headlines that are going out there. They feel like they're good. They don't have the best record here in Atlanta, but they're at least hoping to make a good game of it.
Hope, I think, is all they're going to have, aren't they, Naden? Because if PSG turn up, then there's only one team that's going to win this.
Yeah, with all due respect, I'm not buying that. I think trying to say that it feels all right, we'll be ready for it and so on and so forth is one thing to say, but another thing to be out there on the field against these are the Champions League winners. And I think what's really good about PSG in terms of the way that they play, it is about the 11. It's about the pressing from the front. It's about the fluidity in terms of how they attack. And it's just the speed, the pace, the energy that they have all throughout the team. So those assets really affect pretty much every team that they play against. But I think personally, this Inter Miami side, from a defensive standpoint, I just don't see how they stop them. I think if they were one of those MLS teams that was built to just be incredibly solid, people working as hard as they could, parking the bus type thing, then great. But I don't think a team that Messi's ever played for has ever had a bus to park. They've had his quality and other things around it. So with all due respect, I don't see it. And that's why the odds speak the way that they do. And I think if they are to leave a bit on Inter Miami, well, it's going to need to be a fast start, because otherwise, if PSG get into their rhythm, then it could be the longest 90 minutes that some of those players have probably had in their careers.
Could we talk 5 or 6?
It could be. This really depends on PSG. This doesn't depend on Inter Miami
But you got
whatsoever.
Inter Miami pink on.
Well, because I was feeling it, and then I saw the odds and wasn't feeling it anymore. One of the things that I think is important to point out is the fact that this game is being played in Atlanta in a dome. It's indoors.
Yeah.
So this idea of maybe the heat affecting PSG, not so much. So that's off the table. I do think that Inter Miami has something to lose in this match. For all the good things that they have done coming into this game, and while it is impressive that they got out of the group stage, and yes, they beat Porto, and as competitive as they were in the group, excellent. Now you've created expectations, and you're going to play against PSG, yes, the European champions. You have to be competitive, and you have to keep this game competitive, because if it is the way that you're talking, 5 or 6, and it's not competitive, then all that conversation about the growth, the development of Major League Soccer, catching up with the rest of the world, and then you see a game that is not competitive, then you see a game that it doesn't quite feel like these teams are on the same level of professionalism, then all those questions come back, and all those questions are rehashed. If I'm Inter Miami, I do think that I have something to lose. Everything to gain, of course. Mm-hmm. But I have to make sure this game remains at the very least competitive, and that we give a good account of ourselves. And if nothing else, kick somebody. If nothing else, show some fight. And that's the problem where addressing what Nathan was saying there. I don't know that that's within this group. It's not what makes them a great team in Major League Soccer. It's not because they go around kicking people. Mm-hmm. In fact, their shortcoming is defending.
Alexis, before I let you go, give me a prediction.
Do you know what, Dan? As much as I want to give Inter Miami a small chance in this one, I'm going to say PSG 4-0. I honestly do not know how they're going to come out of this one, even with some Messi magic. I just expect Messi to be at the top looking frustrated and PSG hogging the ball. They'll probably have to try get something on the counter, but it ain't going to happen. PSG to win this one by a country mile.
And what's the thing behind you, Alexis?
That's the stadium, bud.
No, I know it's the stadium. What's it
The
on
thing
other,
behind me
like
is the stadium.
Halfway, like the halfway transformer behind you.
It's a work of art, Dan.
The hexagon. Work of art.
Wow,
is that what
well
you got
done. It's a work of art.
Yeah, that's it. All right, then. Barbecue tonight. What's famous in Atlanta? What's the food?
Fried chicken.
Fried chicken?
Oh, the food is fabulous.
Gus is famous for fried chicken.
Gus is famous fried chicken.
Yeah,
there you are. Alexis, off you go. Go and take a look more of the architecture around. Just a reminder, all these matches stream live on DAZN as the round of 16 continues tomorrow. PSG taking on Inter, and then after that, Flamengo against Bayern Munich. And England are your champions, back-to-back winners, the first since Spain when they did it in 2011, 2013. Nadem, eh? Oh, eh? World Cup.
Never in doubt. It's happening. It's happening, Dan. It's happening. They've done it again. But to be honest, I've got to give this side credit because in the group stages, they didn't look that good. But as time was passing, they got better and better and better. I think Lee Carr's at this level. He's done so well for England. To see them win twice, this is once in a lifetime stuff for people. So I was very impressed in terms of how they played. The pressing was really good. The organisation was good. He wasn't scared to make changes at key moments. He wasn't necessarily even relying on, say, potential stars like Nwaneri for Arsenal. No. He would be put on at the right times, whether it's 5 minutes from the end, 20 minutes from the end, whatever it was. He wasn't scared to make those big decisions, but he kept the group together. The belief was high, and they got better and better throughout the tournament, to the point where in the knockout rounds, they're beating Spain, they're beating the Netherlands, and they're beating a Germany side that hadn't lost in 2 years. Fair play to them. Those decisions that he's made along the way and the performance that those guys put in, tremendous. Because when I look at under-21s football traditionally, you tend to have one or two people that try and just be the star, do something by themselves. But this group really played well as a collective and defended their title. And I think overall it's a deserved victory. Fair play to them, as I say, to be able to come back and hang on in certain games and win that game now after losing to Germany in the group stages. It's a very, very impressive moment, and you wonder how many of these players could potentially be in the mind of Thomas Tuchel for the World Cup in 12 months' time.
Well, that's it. You look at the excitement of the youth that's coming through, obviously winning this tournament, yet you still feel that Thomas Tuchel will start your good mate Jordan Henderson, Nathan.
Yeah, nice work there, Dan. Put me in a pickle. Yes, I think he will potentially start him. But the squad will be big enough to almost have a conversation around the likes of, say, Elliot Anderson, who's been fantastic in this tournament. I think you've got Tyler Morton as well, youngster from Liverpool, who played really, really well. I think it's Scott as well for Bournemouth. So there's good creativity in there. And I think if they continue to develop in this next year, I think it's fair to say that for most players around the world, this next calendar year, if you play the August through May season, is probably one of the biggest in your career because it's in the lead up to a World Cup. And if your nation is there, this is the pinnacle of football, isn't it? So I think Tuchel was there for this game and he saw those players do what they did and he's seen the work that they've done to this point. So yes, for Jordan Henderson, it's just a bigger season for him as it is for, say, the likes of an Elliot Anderson. I'm sure Tuchel will pick the right people. But what I would say is, given the size of the squads for these tournaments now, who's to say that you can't have both?
Remember when Jurgen Klopp questioned Nadem and if he'd ever played, it was Jordan Henderson who came to the rescue of Nadem, and now he wants him dropped for youth for the World Cup.
Wow.
Thank you very much. Welcome into the latest edition of Extra Time. Thank you very much for all of your questions. Ali is here, Nadem, and Gab as well. Gab back from America. You happy to be back in the UK?
Yeah, though it's sweltering over here as well. But I do have air conditioning in my home now, so that is a little bit of a game changer.
Big time showing off, eh, Gab? That's how those ESPN FC pennies are going. Do you have air conditioning in your home, Nadem?
No, I've just got a few windows. Like to open them every now and again. But yeah, can't have Gab Marcotti money, can I?
Native.
So wait a minute. So the budget in Gab's house all went to the air conditioner, right?
Well,
not fixing the background.
No,
in his shot.
Yeah, exactly. This basement.
It's not finished yet, Ali.
All right.
Good things come to those who wait.
All right.
Oh, well, there we are.
Okay.
Nadem, do you believe with Rodri coming back, City will be a totally different team this season compared to what we saw last season?
Yes, because overall they were poor for their standards last season. And I think when you bring back somebody that had the season he had before, as a Ballon d'Or winner, then it's obviously going to help. In terms of that, his injury was a significant one, so he's not going to be at his absolute best. But one thing about Rodri, which I always found to be really impressive, was the fact that he could complement everybody else within that midfield. So I think, yes, that will make a big difference in terms of how City are going to be setting up this year. And I think some of those new signings as well probably have an easier time of things as opposed to the ones who came in this last season.
Gab, should Chelsea sell Jackson and go after John Duran, who's leaving Saudi Arabia?
No. You've invested so much time and money, not that he was a huge signing, but you've invested so much time in Jackson's development. He is developing. I think, if you stick just to the football and ignore the yellow cards for dissent and the red cards for brain farts that we saw against Newcastle in the tournament, the football side of Nico Jackson got better. I think you stick with him. Obviously, you brought in Rory Delap, which probably means they're going to split playing time, but Jackson has multiple uses.
Liam?
Oh, you're laughing?
No, it's because you said Rory Delap.
Yeah.
He's 50 years old now.
Oh, right. I never get this right.
But has a great throwing. Still has a great throwing.
Big pro.
All right, so they brought in Liam Delap.
Yes.
Nico Jackson has multiple uses.
There we go.
He can also
Why
do a
is
job for
Duran
you.
leaving, Gab?
I don't know, maybe he doesn't like Saudi. I don't know.
Okay, I
Ask
thought you
him.
might know. Being a journalist on your big wages, you can afford air conditioning.
Yeah.
Yes, I cover John Duran closely.
Well, Gab, we'll start the question who you cover closely, to be honest. Ali, Madrid have Gonzalo and Endrick. Do you think a team like Manchester United should at least try and loan out one of them for a season better than anything they currently have?
I suppose you could try, but you're going to run into some of the same questions that you've had about the players that you currently have on your team.
Yes.
Hendrik is potential.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Maybe. He's shown some signs, but certainly not enough. So you put him into that squad that has obviously underachieved, and you're saying, yeah, you come and resolve the issues. You talk about that sort of pressure being put on a player that hasn't proven that at the highest level he can be productive with consistency. And in the case of Gonzalo Garcia, most people out there don't even know who Gonzalo Garcia is.
How much should we read into how good he's been?
Huh?
How much should we read into how good he's been in this tournament?
Look, I think it's important that he has made a case for himself and how good he has been, not only with the goals, but his overall play and his willingness to press and see his work rate, because I think he has shown a framework. Dare I say, Gonzalo Garcia has shown Kylian Mbappe a framework of how this can actually work between whoever plays up front with Vini Jr. in a pairing, that they can work off of each other. And if Gonzalo Garcia, who we know is not as good a player as Kylian Mbappe, has made it look as good as it has, then I think it elevates the expectation for Kylian Mbappe. Hey, this young kid over here is making it work. He looks good doing it. He's scoring goals. Look at the work rate, creating chances, running away from the ball, being able to run in behind, but also giving you hold-up play. You got to be able to do it too, Kylian. The young guy's doing it. You should be able to do it as well. I think Gonzalo Garcia has been really good, but it's been 3 matches. So for those that may think he's going to answer the questions for Manchester United, I believe it's a big, big, major leap.
Miles Lewis-Skelly, Nadem, Kirkes, Aït-Nouri. Which of these left backs are most likely to make the Premier League Team of the Season next year? Rank that in order.
Wow.
It's a good question. I think while Robertson's still at Liverpool, I think Kirkes will be sharing game time, and I think the same for Aït-Nouri because
Okay, say
sometimes
Robertson
they will
goes to
probably play
Atletico
Guardiola out there.
Madrid. Say Robertson's gone.
I think for total game time, I think I'll go Kirkes, Lewis-Skelly, and then Aït-Nouri. But it's not to say that they won't have their impact, but in terms of how much they'll play, I think that's going to be the order.
But I don't think that was the question. It wasn't how many minutes are they going to get. It's how good are they going to be at the end of the season.
No, the question was about who's going to be in Team of the Season, Dan.
Exactly.
So are you going to be in Team of the Season if you played half the games?
No, but I believe
are you
that
going to be in the Team of the Season if you
all
played
three
half
of
the
these
games,
players are
Dan?
going to play more than half the games. I think that's a fair assumption to make. So I think you're slightly changing the goalpost by saying, well, who's going to play the most minutes? Because I don't think those necessarily go hand in hand, do they?
Beware assumption, Dan. I'm going in that order, and there's nothing you can do about it. So thank you very much, Dan. Thank you very much.
Well, listen, respect Nadem. You know he's hot. Doesn't have air conditioning. Who knows if the windows are open?
He's not on the Marcotti Millions. Now, another question for you, Nadem. So they get angry. Who's the guy you played with on some of the youth international teams for England that you thought was going to make it as a professional footballer for a long time, but didn't make it?
Oh, here we go.
Who did you think the superstar was going to be that never happened? How many minutes did they have?
Well, so anyway, so I actually only made my international debut at under 20s, and this was after already playing in the Premier League for 2 years. So I played under 20s and under 21s. So most of the people I played with were professional. But to mention a story of somebody who looked like he was going to go, to be one of the biggest stars that we've seen, was a guy I played with called Michael Johnson. And when I was at Man City, the expectation on him, this is a local boy from Manchester, was that he was going to be one of the best players that City have ever had, going back to days of like Colin Bell, who's got a stand named after him, like a City icon. And he was so good that City, within the space of 20, 30 games, gave him a contract which basically broke the way that, you know, they'd set up contracts previously. He was going to be the next thing international. He was going to be the next this. But then unfortunately he suffered an injury, and by the time he's probably in his mid-20s, he'd retired. Wow. He finished his career, I think it was 51 games. And this, again, was a guy who was being spoken about as being the best thing to ever come out of Manchester City's academy. I think he ended up having issues with mental health, there was drinking, there was all sorts with it. And it's a sad tale to see that happen to him. Because, as I say, when he first started his career, he was one of the most exciting players. He was getting spoken about in the same way people spoke about Phil Foden. You know, this was Michael Johnson. But now, you know, when his career finished, he said, I'd just like some time to be left alone so I can get on with the rest of my life. And it's a sad turn, but another sort of story about the realities of how the way football can get you sometimes.
Gab, is there a player that springs to mind that you followed when you were younger that you thought was the bee's knees but never made it?
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's a bunch. I mean, off the top of my head, I mean, the most notable example was, I mean, it's dialing it way back, but there was a striker on the Italian under 18 side who, back then the strikers were Gianluca Vialli and Roberto Mancini, and this guy's name was Marco Macina, and he would start every game and the other two would alternate. That's how good he was, and people were so sure he was going to make it big time. But instead, again, it's another situation where it never quite worked out with him. The suggestion was that, yeah, he loved football, but he liked girls a lot more than football. And that got him into trouble multiple times. And then eventually he lost interest in football. I'm sure he's still interested in girls.
Ali.
How do you follow that up?
I'm excited to find out.
I would say that a name that everybody would be familiar with, and if you happen to be around Major League Soccer, or even if you weren't, because it was a name that became prevalent and important in this league, and I think abroad, is Freddie Adu. Mm-hmm. Everything in Major League Soccer was geared towards Freddie Adu. Everything. I'll give you an example. I played with the LA Galaxy at the time, and if you take the 405 South from where our stadium was, and you go into the freeway, there is a big old billboard that always had the next game coming up for the LA Galaxy, and you know, we'll give you ticket information, this, that, and the other. When Freddie Adu was coming to town with DC United, the billboard that was right outside our stadium said, "Come watch Freddie Adu," and the picture of Freddie Adu take on your LA Galaxy. Real little.
Was a little picture of you?
real tiny. It's like, yeah, take on your LA Galaxy. It gives you an idea of how desperate MLS were at that point to garner attention, to bring eyes to the league. And
did you play against him?
Yes.
And at that point, did you think this kid's got it?
There were certain things about Freddie Adu that were special as a dribbler, and certain things that you think, okay, there is something here. But you must also understand that when he was put in, and people said that he was 16 at the time, others didn't believe it, whatever. Apparently he was 16. When a 16-year-old is put in a position in which he is above everybody else in the league, and he's now put in the middle with professionals, he becomes a target.
Sure.
Right away, he becomes a target. And, you're the guy. You got to remember that nobody was getting paid in MLS back then. Freddie Adu was getting paid. And that creates resentment. That creates, you're the guy who's more important than everybody else. People were going after Freddie Adu. And Freddie Adu didn't help himself because there were rumors about the added to the professionalism or lack thereof. Of course, he was a young kid. There were mistakes to be made, but MLS was building everything on Freddie Adu. I'll give you another example. And while this may sound as if I'm talking about myself, it really isn't. I scored a hat trick against DC United at DC United, and we won the game away from home. The story of that game was not that I scored a hat trick, was not that we won away from home. It was that Freddie Adu scored a meaningless goal at the end of the match. Freddie Adu was this, that, and the other. Everything, every headline was about Freddie Adu. And when you elevate somebody like that and he doesn't quite live up to it, it becomes a really, really steep fall.
Well, Ali, so you were describing, I think you said earlier, you said the entire league was, the entire MLS was geared and focused towards elevating just one player, and it was just about him, and in their marketing and everything else, they're pushing one player. I'm glad we've come so far.
Yep. Very valid point.
Final question. Ali, Gab decided he's going to go to Venezuela.
Okay.
To discover your beautiful country. What food are you recommending, and what should he do when he's there?
Well, the obvious option is arepa.
Okay.
But arepa, there are many variations of it, and what you can put inside an arepa and what goes inside an arepa, it depends on where you go in Venezuela. But arepa is our staple.
Okay.
You can have pabellón criollo, but depending where you go in Venezuela, you can also, if you go to Margarita Island, you can have pabellón margariteño, which is.
So I don't quite know what those words you're saying are.
Okay. Pabellón criollo is shredded beef, black beans,
okay,
white rice, sweet plantains.
Okay.
With little arepitas, little fried arepitas on the side.
So like Chipotle with bananas.
This is just okay. I'm not even going to acknowledge that. Pabellón margariteño is all of those things without the shredded beef, and actually you have seafood, fish.
Okay.
Really finely diced fish. Also very tasty. And it's not Chipotle. No, it is not. The Venezuelan cuisine is magnificent, and I miss it every day.
Right.
I don't get to go back to Venezuela all that often.
Of course.
So if Gab indeed is going back to Venezuela or going to Venezuela, please bring me with you.
Oh, there we are.
Please bring me with you, Gab.
Little ESPN Plus adventure.
Bring me with you, Gab.
Beautiful.
Vamos, Venezuela!
How's the air conditioning?
We don't have air conditioning in my house, though.
Oh, no.
Well, yes, my parents' bedroom had air conditioning.
Okay, well, anyway, that's it. ESPN FC returns.
I wonder why that door was always locked.
Reflecting on
it was for the air conditioner, I think.
Into Miami. Flamengo against Bayern Munich. Be sure to join us.